Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Baker, and I'm a community manager here at Udacity. We're going to get started in just a few minutes for today's event called Succeeding as a Freelancer. But before we do, I think it's so important to get to know who's here, who's in the room, because this is your Udacity community. So if you would, hop over to chat and introduce yourself. Put in where you're joining from, and then if you have freelanced before, type in a yes. And if you haven't freelanced before, type in no or not yet. And then that way we get to see who's here and who's here and what the experience is of everyone in the room. So go ahead and do that now, and you should be able to see my video. So let's see, we have Cyril, Dina, and Reem, not yet. No worries. Kartik is yes, wonderful. Jack is not yet. A lot of not yets, but you know what? That's perfect, because that's exactly why we're here today, is to go over what the basics are for getting started as a freelancer so that you can decide what you want to do and have the tools necessary to be able to take that next step. And so with that, we are going to take it away. So first, thank you all so much for joining and for introducing yourself. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you today to our event, Succeeding as a Freelancer. This event is co-presented by the Udacity Alumni Network, which is part of the careers team, and by Samaschool. And Samaschool is a nonprofit based here in San Francisco that equips people with the skills they need to succeed as freelancers and to leverage independent work to achieve their long-term career goals. You can learn more about Samaschool at samaschool.org, and we're also joined by Kira and by Oralee from Samaschool, who will be in the chat to answer any questions you might have. Our goal for today is to cover the foundations of what it takes to succeed as a freelancer. And so that means we'll cover the essentials for getting started, both on how to present yourself, where to find work, how to network and talk about the skills you have, as well as the steps you can take to build your own personal brand to become known as a freelancer. And then finally, we'll offer plenty of resources, thanks to Samaschool, that you can use to land your very first freelancing opportunity. The way that this event is structured is that we'll have about 30 minutes of presentation up front from our special guest from Samaschool that covers these basics. Then the rest of the time is for live Q&A. So all throughout this session, as you have questions, go ahead and post them into the chat. You'll either have another student or another alum have that same question and respond, or the ones that are most relevant to everyone will get funneled to myself here, and then I'll pose them live to Jesse after his presentation. So be sure to take advantage of the chat and meet each other and to track all of your questions there to help each other out. One final note before we get started, before we dive in, is that the content of this presentation has been tailored to a United States market. And so for freelancing, anything that might come up about taxes or different resources that are US specific, those may not be as relevant to those of you who are based in other countries. However, the principles of what it takes to succeed as a freelancer, the mindset, and many of the tools apply no matter what region you're in, what country you're in around the world. And so, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Jesse Bizignano, who is a curriculum manager at Samaschool. And as part of that, he teaches their freelancing curriculum, both in person, online, as well as creates digital tools for freelancers to really succeed and thrive in their work. And so I'm going to pass it off to Jesse, who's going to introduce himself before sharing his screen and taking us away for the presentation.
Thanks, Karen. And Hello, everyone out there. Really thankful for the opportunity to join this webinar and share some of what we're working on at Samaschool and just some of the insights that we've developed over the years in terms of succeeding as a freelancer. So, as Karen mentioned, yeah, I'm the curriculum manager here. So I develop and maintain all of our courses across our online courses, our in-person courses, and I'm also a freelance web designer on the side. So I've been doing some web development freelance for the past few years, just as a way to kind of flex my creative muscles and take on some extra interesting projects when I get the chance. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. And as Karen mentioned, yeah, feel free to just drop all your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll get to those at the end. So let me just share my screen. Great. Does that look good to everyone? Karen, is that looking good? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So as Karen mentioned, at Samaschool, our mission is to equip people to benefit from independent work. And also we do some advocacy work around advocating for pro-freelancing initiative and legislation, just in terms of making sure that freelancers are protected and having a good work environment. And the basic outline of this session, we're going to start off just by learning a little bit about the differences between freelancing and conventional full-time employment, and just looking at some of the pros and cons about both options. Then we're going to talk about where you can find freelance work. So if you decide that freelancing is a good fit for you, we're going to explain some of the places you can find it. And then we'll talk a little bit about personal branding for freelancers. So how do you express your unique personality and put your best foot forward when you're trying to look for freelance work? And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the process of actually securing a freelance job once you've found one that looks like a good fit for you. And we'll wrap up with some tools and resources that can help you on your way as you start your journey towards freelancing. So a little bit about just why Samaschool is engaged in the freelance economy and why we're doing the work that we're doing. And one of the main reasons is that the American workforce has really undergone some pretty significant changes in the last decade, and we're really seeing a significant rise in freelancing overall. So the freelance workforce has actually grown 3 times faster than the workforce overall since 2014. So it's definitely a trend that no matter what type of work you want to end up doing long term, it's important to have the skills to actually be competitive on the freelance marketplace. So over a third of Americans earned at least some income from freelancing in 2017. And we're going to see this trend continue to grow in the next 5 to 10 years. So estimates suggest that a full half of working adults will do some sort of freelancing in the next decade. And then employers are also reporting that they're leveraging freelancers more and more. So 40% of employers expect to use some kind of freelance work by 2020. So even if a full-time job is your long-term goal, freelancing is definitely something to have on your radar and be prepared to engage in, just so you can take advantage of all the opportunities that are available out there. So just before we dive in fully into finding freelance work and securing it, I think it's important to understand some of the core differences between being a freelancer and being a traditional employee. So freelancing is not something that we recommend for everyone. I think it's important that everyone really assess their own personal needs and understand whether freelancing is a fit for them and whether you have some really non-negotiable needs that freelancing might not meet. So if you do, then it might not be the best fit for you. But that being said, there's a lot of benefits to it that I'm going to touch on in a moment. But before we get there, just some basic differences. So freelancers generally make their own schedules, so they're not going to have necessarily the regular schedule that a traditional employee might have. And instead of having a boss or supervisor, you'll be working with a client. So even though you're working to satisfy their needs, they don't have the same type of control over you that a traditional boss might have. Furthermore, freelancers are required to provide their own materials. So that might include, your computer, your cell phone, car, things like that. If you're someone who likes to work independently, freelancing could be a great fit. Often freelancers may collaborate with other freelancers on larger projects, but it's often likely that you will be working independently, versus traditional employees often work as part of teams. The general size or unit of work is slightly different. So freelancers often work on a project basis rather than having kind of an open-ended, ongoing scope of work that a traditional employee might have. And then finally, the pricing is often priced based on the project or an hourly rate, versus an hourly rate or a salary for a traditional employee. And quite importantly, freelancers don't receive any benefits, which may be provided by a traditional full-time job, although that's not always the case. So just before we go any further, it's good to just kind of absorb this, understand a little bit about the differences that you may see. So I touched on, or I alluded to some of the benefits of freelancing. And like I said, we don't advocate freelancing for everyone. We think that it provides a lot of benefits, but it might not be a fit for your unique situation. So it's really important for you to assess that for yourself. But that being said, some of the benefits of freelancing include earning extra income. So if you need to supplement your income to pay for your housing, maybe a training course, maybe you're in college and wanting to just earn a little extra cash to pay for tuition, or you're starting a business, whatever your needs may be, freelancing can be a good way to earn that extra cash. Likewise, if you need a flexible schedule, so say you are in college and you have classes that you need to be able to work around, that's a great fit. Also, if you have kids or childcare, whatever your unique situation is, having that flexibility is one of the major things that people look for when they're turning to freelancing. Freelancing can also help you develop skills and work experience if you're starting out in a new career. So a lot of our students are transitioning careers, and they maybe have some training in that career, but they don't necessarily have the work experience or portfolio to really be able to go into a job interview confidently and being able to say that, oh, I have like applied experience in this field. And so freelancing can be a really great way to build up some of that experience and be able to draw on that experience as you transition to a full-time job. You can also use freelancing to experiment with new careers if you are potentially curious about a career transition, but you're not sure whether you want to fully commit to that. Freelancing, because of the smaller size of the job, is a good way to test it out before you fully commit. And finally, just the nature of working for a lot of different clients is a great way to develop new professional contacts. So you can eventually potentially pull on those contacts or turn to those contacts when you are trying to find a full-time job or looking for new freelance clients. You're just going to meet a lot of new people over the course of freelancing. And so that's just going to expand your network and could provide a lot of value down the road to you. So when it comes to freelancing, one of the benefits of freelancing is just how available it is in terms of the different types of work. So it's available for almost every industry, and in many cases, there's freelance work available for things that you wouldn't be able to find as a full-time job. So This slide is just a snapshot of some of the work options that are available to you. I know that, for instance, the design and tech category is definitely something that a lot of you on the line may be interested in. So computer programming, design, all those types of things are, there's lots of availability for freelancing. But really, no matter what you do or what skills you have, there's something out there for you. And I'm going to preview a tool in a little bit that will show you some of the other categories as well. So when it comes to finding freelance work, there's really 4 major categories of sources of work. So we have online work platforms, which many of you are probably familiar with, platforms like Upwork or TaskRabbit or Thumbtack. I'm going to go into a little more detail on those in a bit. There's online job boards, so things like Indeed. Even if you just search in Google, that will bring up a lot of results. Then there's word of mouth and referrals. So just using your network, letting your network know that you're freelancing and that you're doing this type of work. And finally, staffing agencies, which will actually look for work on your behalf or alert you to different work opportunities. So each of these sources of work have their own pros and cons. So in terms of online work platforms, it's a great source of work in terms of connecting to clients, but there are some drawbacks in terms of fees, and they can be somewhat competitive depending on the type of work you do, just because you're competing with a global labor force. So especially with remote work, people can be doing that from anywhere in the world, and it can make it sometimes competitive in terms of price. But we'll talk about some strategies for still succeeding on platforms. Online job boards have a lot of work opportunities as well, but the process for securing those jobs can be a little bit slower. It can often require a slightly longer job application process. So if you're looking for immediate work, that might not be the best option. Word of mouth and referrals probably generate the best quality of leads in terms of the clients finding you and having that recommendation from someone, a third party who's trusted. But it can be hard to predict when exactly you're going to get those referrals. It's not as much in your control often when those referrals come in. So it can be a little bit more of a passive source of work, versus online work platforms and job boards are more in your control as to when you want to apply for work. And finally, staffing agencies, they'll interview you, understand your skill set, and then look for work on your behalf. So this can be great in terms of having someone else out there who's actively looking for work for you, but it can be a little bit, it can take some control away from you in terms of the clients that you get in touch with through them. And also the fees can be quite high for staffing agencies, especially if you're doing temporary contract work. They can take pretty significant chunks of your income. So you are paying for the service that they provide. So again, you can mix and match these different sources of work. You don't need to only pursue one. And over time, your strategies may shift. So you may start off using predominantly online work platforms, but then as you build experience and a network of clients, you might find that they're actually referring you to a lot of new clients, and you might actually not need to turn to the online work platforms quite as much because your referral and word of mouth business is growing. So this isn't something that will be static over time. You'll kind of evolve and find the right mix and match that meets your specific needs. So I just want to zoom in on gig platforms for a second. This is something that it's probably the newest segment in terms of sources of freelance work. Really, just within the past decade, we've seen these really take off. So everything from Uber to Upwork, Thumbtack, TaskRabbit, Fiverr. There's really literally hundreds of these platforms out there. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the reasons why you might consider using a platform. So first and foremost is that it gives you a way to express your personal brand online through your public profile that demonstrates your skills and experience. So over time, you can kind of add your different skills, the different jobs you've worked on, your portfolio to this profile that clients are able to review and get a sense for who you are and the quality of work that you do. And tied into that are these ratings and reviews. So you're able to build up this public online reputation over time that's going to validate you to potentially new clients who are who have never met you in person, but because they see that you've done, X number of jobs and maintained a 5-star rating, that proves to them that you're going to do quality work and that that you're worth considering as someone to hire. Platforms also can make it easier to handle the payment and invoicing process. So a lot of it's baked in. Some also include escrow services where the platform will act as a third party to hold the money until you complete the work to ensure that you get paid, which can be really helpful. So it can just make getting paid a lot quicker. And then also just as a middleman to help connect clients and freelancers, they're just kind of a meeting place online where freelancers and clients can go to meet each other. And especially there's a lot of platforms that are specific to particular industries. And so if that's the type of work you do, you know that the clients that are going there are looking for that type of work. And so that can help to narrow down the field and really bring you more qualified leads. Finally, or not finally, but next we have messaging and call services. So often you might want to keep your private information private and not necessarily give it out to every new client. And so this can help protect you that way. And there can also be some liability insurance included in the platform. So this is generally more important when you're doing in-person work. So say you're a handyman or a plumber or something like that. This can help provide some additional protection for you if something were to go wrong on the job and say you flooded someone's house or something. This would help protect you in that sense. So less important for the type of remote work where you're maybe just doing web design or programming, something like that. There's less of a risk of you doing real damage to the client's property. So less important there, but if you do, if you are interested in in-person work, it can be quite valuable. So yeah, that's just a kind of snapshot, high-level overview of some of the benefits of gig platforms. So I want to just highlight some tools as we go through this. So the first one is our Work Finder. So this is a little app that we've put together just to help you. If you do want to go down the route of using an online work platform, there's just so many out there, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And so this will help you narrow that down slightly and just find the platforms that offer the type of work you want to do, and then provide a little bit of information about those types of, or about those platforms. So I'm just going to pull it up right here. So when you go to samaschool.org/work, that's the URL. And you'll have the recording of this, so you can always turn back to the recording for the URL. But you can go here anytime. The tool is free to use. And we have it filtered by in-person work or remote work or all. So right now it's on all categories. And so you can see just the number and the breadth of the work categories that are available. So everything from ride sharing, which we're all familiar with, personal training, dog walking, this design and tech category is probably of most relevance to everyone on the line now. But we also have, accounting, Salesforce optimizations, marketing, as I mentioned, plumbing and the trades. And there's, everything from you can be a mock juror online to doing some user testing, translation, what have you. So feel free to just hop on samaschool.org/work and browse these categories, see what looks good to you. If you're just interested in remote work, this will just filter out just the categories that are more relevant remotely. So if you were to click on one of these, let's check out, let's do web design. So it's open already. So if you click in there, it'll just take you here and it'll give you a little bit of information about web design, what you can expect to earn. And then below we have all the platforms that offer web design. So for instance, Fiverr is a pretty well-known one. And it'll just tell you a little bit about Fiverr and then the type of platform it is. So this is more about how you would actually go about getting jobs on Fiverr. So for Fiverr, you would either submit a proposal or be invited by a client. There's also auto matching in some platforms, and that's when the platform uses an algorithm to just connect the client and the freelancer based on certain criteria. So neither the client nor the freelancer is really like choosing each other. They're just being matched by the platform. So that everyone who's used Uber or Lyft can kind of understand that you don't really choose your driver and your driver doesn't choose you. You just kind of get matched automatically. And then the hustle score is just, we've partnered with a blog called Side Hustle, and they've actually done some really in-depth reviews about a lot of these platforms. And so if you're curious about a platform, you can hop on here and actually read some pretty in-depth reviews about the platforms themselves to get a sense. And they've actually done some interviews with workers to get a sense for how things are, how it is that actually use that platform. And then the score is just their overall assessment in terms of the quality of the platform. And then finally, you can just link to their website. So we just made it easy for you to go check it out and sign up if you're interested. So like I said, we're just trying to take some of the guesswork out of finding the right platform for you. So go ahead and use this as you need. Cool. So now I want to just hop into a little bit about personal branding for freelancers. So what is personal branding and why is it so important to merit its own section in this presentation? Well, we talk about personal branding in terms of your experience, your professionalism, and your personality kind of all wrapped up together and expressed to someone who's never met you. So what do you want people to associate with you? How do you want to present yourself? What is it that's going to make you kind of stand out and be unique? When you're especially using an online work platform, you have to put yourself in the client's shoes and understand that they're looking at potentially 5, 10 other freelancers. So what is it that's going to really make you stand out from the crowd and make you seem like the best choice for that job? So when you're using an online work platform or even like a LinkedIn profile, there's a few different ways to express your personal brand. So the first thing that most people see is the profile picture. So we'll talk a little bit more about what makes a good profile picture, but you do want to make sure you have one and that it's well done. There's also an About Me sections, which is usually just a short little description about you and your services. It's a little bio. Many online work platforms also let you select your work categories and skills. So these are also important to set up just because a lot of the filtering and searching that goes on these online work platforms connects to this. So if someone's searching for web design, then you're going to want to have that as a work category or skill in your profile so that you pop up in those search results. And then there may also be a section for your work experience or education. This is a place to add additional credentials that you may have. For instance, if you have your Udacity nano degree, you might want to add that there. And then also your pricing is part of your personal brand. So pricing does signal to the client the kind of quality range that you're in. So you want to make sure that if you're a really, top-notch expert freelancer, you're not pricing yourself too low, because that might actually signal that your quality of work's not as good. Likewise, if you're starting out and you don't have any experience, you might want to price a little bit lower on the scale just so that you're a little bit more competitive in the marketplace. And then finally, your ratings and reviews are also part of your personal brand. It's something that you might have a little bit less control over, but one way that you can exercise some control over it is making sure that you reach out to clients who you feel you've done a good job for, and just politely asking them to submit a rating or review. Just note that this, I'd really appreciate a review. It really helps me to find new clients, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And so here's just a little snapshot of my personal Upwork profile. So just to show you kind of how that all ties together. So got my profile picture, my little tagline that I specialize in Wix websites personally. And then those are some of the skills and work categories that I've tagged there. So that'll help me show up in search results for those topics. And then finally, my About Me section, which you'll notice isn't very long. It's only a few sentences, but just to introduce myself and give people a sense for what I'm all about, what type of work I do, what my kind of niche focus is. So I want to highlight the next tool, which is the About Me generator. So let me just pull this up. And you can find this on our tools page. So if you go to samaschool.org/tools and you go to the Tools by Samaschool section, that's actually going to take you to all the tools that we've put together for you. And you'll see here the About Me generator. So the About Me generator, it's just a way for us to give you a kind of head start or a little bit of a nudge in writing about yourself, because we know that it's not always the easiest to write about yourself. It's not something that we do quite often, so it can be a little bit uncomfortable. And so we put together what's essentially like a Mad Lib for writing a personal description. So I'm just going to demo it really quick. So I provide web design. I live in San Francisco. And my work stands out because I have a modern design aesthetic. I've been doing this work for 3 years. I love doing my work because it gives me a chance to work with clients from many different industries. And so this just spits out a draft About Me section for you. And so what you can do then is just copy that. And if you say you want to make some changes, just paste it in here and edit it. So I think this looks good. I'll just say best, oops. Jesse, and then I'll just type in my email address, and that'll send me an email to send a copy to my email, so I have that for my records. So it'll send you both the original and the edited version, so you can just have that for your records, turn back to that. And like I said, you can definitely customize that. Don't feel like you need to keep it the way it is. You can change it to reflect your personal brand even more strongly. It's just a kind of starting point for you. So I wanted to, before we move on any further, just pop back to the profile picture for a second. So these are just a few general rules for taking a good profile picture. So you want to make sure that your picture is clear, not blurry. So make sure it's not like stretched, that you keep the aspect ratios correct, and so you don't stretch it to be too wide or too narrow or what have you. Try to use some good lighting so that people can clearly see your face, and try to find a neutral background that's not too busy. A lot of phones these days even have portrait modes that will kind of blur the background for you, which are really helpful. And then just focus on kind of your shoulders up, so that your face is clearly visible, and then just make sure you smile and are friendly. And then basic like portrait rules, just follow those and you'll be great. So say you don't want to use an online work platform, which a lot of people don't, and it's totally fine. It's, platforms are just one option amongst many, but how do you express that personal brand if you don't have an online work profile? And so there's a few ways you can do that. Probably the best way is to set up just a personal portfolio website. So you can use one of these services that provide a lot of templates that make it easy for you to create a personal website, and you can just throw up a headshot, a little about me section, a link, or some of the projects or portfolio of work that you've done. So say you've done some little projects as part of your training program, maybe link to those, show a little bit about just the type of work that you do, the quality of work that you do. And then you can also turn to social media. So depending on the type of work you do, this might be more relevant or less relevant, but definitely having a LinkedIn profile is important. If you're doing stuff that maybe is more like referral based, then Facebook and Instagram and Nextdoor might be more valuable to you, especially if it's in-person work. If you're running a cleaning business, if you're running like a clothing business, something like that, you might want to use a more visual medium like Instagram, or Facebook will help people spread the word about your business through their own social networks. So these are just things to consider when you're trying to round out your online marketing strategy. Okay, cool. So we're going to just go into a little bit about the process of actually securing work once you've found it. So when it comes to finding a job, the first step is really to do the job search or be invited by a client. So this is kind of the longest process for finding a job. So say you're not using like an auto matching platform like Uber, you're using more of a marketplace platform like Upwork, or you're getting jobs through referrals or word of mouth. So once you've found a job that looks like it could be a fit, the next job is to assess that job. So just to see, okay, like, does this meet my core criteria in terms of what I'm looking for across the skill set, the price point, the timeline. Does the client look like a good client to work for? Does this check all the boxes that I have personally for the type of work I want to do? And then the next part would be to submit a proposal, or if you're going through just a conventional job board, or maybe word of mouth, submit a cover letter or resume. And then if the client likes your proposal or your resume, they may invite you for an interview. And during the interview, you're just trying to assess, okay, like, is this client looking for can I deliver a quality service to this client that's going to meet their needs? And likewise, is this job in line with my personal needs? So you're kind of interviewing each other in a lot of ways to make sure that you're both going to be happy with the result of the job. And so there might be multiple interviews as you kind of iron this out. So there may be a preliminary phone screen where the client's just trying to assess whether they should move you to the next round, and then they might follow up with potentially some other teammates of theirs to see whether, a more in-depth review of like what you would bring to the table. And then if they decide that you are indeed the person that they want to move forward with, then there might be some final negotiation and then ultimately starting the job. So this should look pretty familiar to anyone who's done like a conventional job search before, but it can be quite accelerated, especially if you're using an online work platform. The process, the speed at which this moves forward may be faster than with like a conventional job interview process. So just when it comes to finding work after you've done that job search, or potentially an inbound referral has come in, it's important to assess that job and make sure that it's in line with what you're looking for. You shouldn't accept every job that comes your way, and likewise, you shouldn't just randomly apply or send out proposals to jobs without really understanding whether they're a good fit for you. So here's kind of the 6 criteria that we recommend you look at. So skills, like, do you have the right skills for the job? Are you confident that you can complete the job and do so at a quality that's going to make the client really happy? Are you going to earn enough from this job to make it worth your while? So especially where you're looking at a fixed price job where the client's offering a fixed amount of money to complete the whole project, you need to understand, okay, am I going to be able to get this job done quickly enough to make that fixed price worth it? Or if it's an hourly rate, is this hourly rate after I've subtracted platform fees, after I've subtracted what I need to save for taxes, am I still making enough on an hourly basis to make this job worth my while? And then availability, like, is there a hard deadline that the client's trying to reach, and how does that match to my personal schedule? Like, am I in college right now and I have a bunch of classes, or it's finals week and I'm not even going to be able to work on this project until a week from now, and that's only going to leave me a couple days to get it done? Like, okay, I shouldn't accept that job. I should just look for another one where it's a little bit more in line with my own availability. Client quality. So this one's a little more subjective, and it really depends on the platform that you're using in terms of how much information they give you about clients. So for instance, personally, like, I've used Upwork for the most part for my freelancing, and they provide quite a bit of information about the clients. So freelancers are able to review clients, and you also see when their account was created, whether their payments verified, like how many jobs they've posted versus how many freelancers they've hired, how much money they've paid out to freelancers. So that's all stuff I'm looking at when I'm assessing a client to see whether they seem like a legit client or not. So you often see like a client who just created their account like that day and hasn't registered their payment method, and you're like, I don't think this person's really serious about hiring a freelancer. They might just be kind of testing the water. I'm not going to take the time to actually apply to that job. Tools. So do you have the right tools for the job? Like, are they asking for, potentially you to have a certain type of software, or if it's an in-person job, are you going to a plumbing job and you don't have the right tools in your toolbox? So just making sure that you've got everything you need. And then location, again, for in-person work. Is this job someplace that you can get to easily? Do you have transportation to get there? Are you going to spend like 2 hours commuting to this job and it's only a 1 hour job that's paying you $50? It might not be worth it. Once you have to commute back, all of a sudden you've wasted 4 hours on the road. You're not really making money to justify that commute. So these are all just things to quickly check. And as you look at more jobs and as you become more experienced with assessing jobs, you'll be able to go through this really quick in your head and just be like, okay, has this satisfied all the needs that I have, or are there some red flags that I need to look further? Okay, so once you've assessed a job and you've found one that seems to meet all your criteria and it seems like it's a really good fit, we've got a few different proposal templates that you can use, or we've got a proposal generator, which is very similar to the About Me generator that we've created. So you can always go to samaschool.org/proposals here, and we've got just like a little write-up about what should be in your proposal. And then we've got the proposal generator, and we've also got the templates here for you. So you can just copy these, customize them yourself, make it, the biggest thing with a proposal is that you want it to be custom for each job, but you don't want to spend forever on each proposal. You want to be able to fire these off pretty quickly, because in a lot of ways it's a numbers game. So you need to be sending out a lot of proposals to be getting a job. So the ratio can be as high as like 10, 15 proposals to get one interview or a job. So you want to be able to like do this pretty quickly while you're, watching TV or something. Just be like, okay, I'm just gonna like send out a bunch of proposals now. So this proposal generator kind of makes that easy for you. So I'm just gonna walk you guys through it. Yes, the client's name is Mark. So this will be a web design job, and idea of portfolio, it's www.jessewebdesign.com. So it just kind of asks you a bunch of Mad Libs, so I'll help you increase sales conversions. So here's my proposal template. So as you can tell, it's not super long. And that's one thing that I want to highlight, is that it doesn't need to be really long to be effective, because often clients, they're not looking to read your life story. They're just trying to see if you are potentially a good fit for the job. So it really, if you do have a portfolio, that can be one of the best ways to connect with clients, because a lot of times they're just looking for examples of the quality of your work, and that's what they're going to be really interested in seeing. So as much as you can provide examples of your work, that's really valuable. And just getting people, the proposal is just a way for you to kind of get people to that portfolio or to your website or what have you. Again, you can just kind of like paste it in here, make any customizations that you want. So thanks, Jesse. And then again, it'll email that to you, so you'll have that for your records. So you can always turn back to that when you need to. So moving right along, and again, all these tools are on our tools page. So just go to samaschool.org/tools whenever you need, and you'll find them all there, along with a bunch of other stuff. So actually, I want to just walk you guys through that really quick before we move forward anymore. So as I mentioned before, there's all the tools that we've made. So you've got your proposal templates, proposal generator, work finder, about me generator. We've got a community chat here where like I'm on there all the time. So if you have any questions about freelancing that you want to ask me directly or some of our other instructors, just pop in there. You can sign up with like an existing Gmail or Facebook or Twitter account, and you can ask us, get in touch with us. There's also a pre-interview prep tool. So say you do land an interview and you just want to make sure that you're like really prepared for it. This is just going to ask you like a few questions about the job that's going to get you to research that job and come up with a few questions to ask the client ahead of time so that you're ready if they ask you if you have any questions. And then we've just got some different little quick start guides, like what do you need to do if you're looking for work? We've got the work finder, online job boards. Again, Side Hustle has really good reviews. And then these are just a couple of blogs with some other kind of work from home opportunities. So if you're not, if you don't find an online work platform that you want to use or what have you, you can hop on here, check out some of those. Some information on insurance. So that's one of the potential drawbacks of freelancing is that you're not going to get insurance provided by your employer. So it's going to be on you to make sure you have the insurance that you need. So we partnered with Stride. We don't get paid for this, but we just think that their process is pretty streamlined and easy to use. So if you need health insurance, check them out. And then if you are doing in-person work or work that you feel like you need some liability insurance, Verify and Next Insurance are both pretty easy ways to get some general liability insurance, like starting pretty cheap at less than $20 a month to get coverage. So definitely if you're doing work where you think you could break something valuable or damage something on the job, it's worth having. And then
Jesse, I'm going to actually wonder if we can move to questions now, because I see that we have limited time left. So I want to make sure we get to folks' questions.
Totally.
But thank you so much for this informative presentation. I think I'm not alone in saying you have flooded us with resources and many different tools that we can go to and many different places to learn more. And thank you also to Kira in the chat and to Orly in the chat for answering everyone's questions as they come. We now have a few minutes left for questions. And the one that has come up again and again in chat is, how do you determine pricing? How do you know what to charge for a specific project? And do you have any resources that you would recommend for this?
Definitely. So pricing is one of the hardest things to do as a freelancer, just because it's kind of a moving target. So there's one way to price is through kind of a market rate of pricing. So you can look on platforms and see what similar freelancers that are offering your same service and in your general geography are offering. So a lot of these platforms will let you search for freelancers as a client. So you can go on and look up, so say I'm doing web design in the US, I can go on and look up, like a few different web designers and create like a general price range from like lowest to highest of those few freelancers, and then decide kind of where in there I want to price myself based on the experience that I have. So if I'm more experienced, I can price a little higher. If I'm a little less experienced starting out, I can price a little bit lower. So that's one strategy. There are like some more, a little bit more nuanced pricing strategies as well around like the value that you're providing to the client. So if you think that your work is going to help the client generate like an additional $100,000 of revenue or something like that, you can price based on like a fraction of the value add that you're bringing to the client. That's a little bit more of a sophisticated style of pricing. So generally, we recommend starting off with more of like a market rate strategy until you're a little bit more established and comfortable with freelancing in general. So I would start with that. I will say we have, I believe it's samaschool.org/pricing or price. If you, yeah, I'll see if I can share that. We have a little landing page that just has some information on pricing, so I can share that as well.
Awesome. It's like you've thought of everything, everything that someone would need. Which takes us to our next question, which has actually been asked by also quite a few people. Abbas, Devastri, Screffy. What is the minimum that you need to get started freelancing? Do you need a portfolio? Do you need a website? And as a follow-on, if you really do just start by creating a profile on some site, how do you get past having no ratings, no stars, no way of really standing out?
Totally. So I would say the minimum you would want if you're starting off on a platform is just a complete profile. So making sure that you've filled out the profile as much as you can. Granted, yeah, if you don't have any portfolio or work examples, that can definitely make things more challenging. But you could, depending on the type of work you want to do, it doesn't have to be necessarily like a project you've delivered to a client to still be included in your portfolio. It could be like just a writing sample if you're doing writing, or a practice app that you've created in your class, something like that. It doesn't have to be a paid example of your work. It just could be something that demonstrates the quality of your work. I think that's the biggest thing, is just people want to see, okay, if I hire this person, what type of work are they actually going to deliver to me?
That's great. And a question from Kari related to that is, how do you deal with any uncertainties or ambiguity in scope, right? Especially if pricing is related to the deliverable. How do you negotiate that?
Definitely. So when you're going through the interview process with a client, you have to look at it not just that they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them and trying to learn more about the job. So you shouldn't be afraid also to turn jobs down. So if you're trying to learn as much as you can about what the client's actually trying to accomplish and what the scope of the project's really going to be during that interview process, because a lot of the times the job posting is not going to be as complete as it should be. And so during that interview process, you're trying to like really understand the full scope of the job, what it's going to entail, like sometimes the client won't actually know what they want until you start talking to them and asking them questions and really understanding what they're trying to accomplish. And you want to avoid situations where a lot of clients will have like unrealistic expectations of what something should cost. And so you need to really fully understand, their objectives, and then bring your expertise to the table to like estimate how long it's going to take and what the appropriate price is going to be. And you shouldn't be afraid of coming back to a client, say they have an estimated budget of $500, but you think that realistically it's going to cost $1,500. You shouldn't be afraid to go back to the client and tell them, hey, I can do this job for you, but this is what it's going to cost. And if they're not willing to pay that, it's totally fine to walk away. Likewise, if you think that initially you think you have all the skills you need to complete the job, but then over the course of your conversations with the client, you learn that the job is actually much more complex than you initially thought, it's totally fine to just tell the client, hey, I'm sorry, but this job's a little bit out of my skill range or my comfortability scope, and I think you need to find someone else. So definitely don't be afraid to walk away from jobs, and don't feel like just because you got an interview, you necessarily need to accept the job.
I think that's great advice. And A question that is relevant to many Udacity folks who are gaining new skills, right, and looking to make a transition in a career is, how do you know when you're ready? How do you know that your skills are up to speed for a particular project or a particular client?
Totally. I think it's really up to you to kind of decide how much you want to bite off for a project. So you shouldn't be afraid to kind of start smaller with simpler projects that you're really confident that you can knock out of the park and build that positive reputation, and then take on a little bit more risk over time in terms of projects that push your skill level. But I think one thing that really freelancers tend to benefit from the most, or the people who succeed at freelancing the most, are people who have a lot of grit. So I think everyone who's in Udacity obviously has taken it upon themselves to go through this self-motivated training program. So I think everyone has that, but bringing that to the table and not being afraid to learn on the job and be able to troubleshoot on the fly when you do hit some small stumbling blocks is important. And so, yeah, I would say don't take on projects where you clearly know that this is kind of above your head and a little bit more than you're really prepared for. Likewise, yeah, don't be afraid to stretch a little bit to get to that next level. But yeah, it's kind of like pricing where it's different for everyone, and everyone has their own tolerance for how much uncertainty or ambiguity they're willing to take on. So if you know personally that you're a little bit more conservative in that regards, maybe start off with some projects that are a little more clearly within your capability range.
And for those students and those alums who are changing careers and want to highlight this experience that they're gaining from freelancing, what is the best way to showcase that on a resume, for example, or LinkedIn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So for LinkedIn, generally what I recommend is to kind of approach it like a conventional job where you just write freelance whatever you were doing. So for me, freelance web designer, and then put the dates, and then uh, talk about the number of jobs you've done. If you do have a really high rating, you can mention like 5-star rating on Upwork or what have you. And you could also potentially link to portfolio of freelance work that you've done. So if you do, so for instance, for my web design, I keep a web design portfolio website, and I can link to that so people can go there and see some of the examples of my work.
That's great. And we're just going to answer a few more questions, go 2 minutes over. For our international folks on the line. So Cyril and Lakshmi and many others in chat have asked, can you freelance for an American company if you are not American and you're not based in America? And how does all of that work with taxes and so on? And that's from Klaus.
Totally. So yeah, you can absolutely freelance internationally, and that's one of the major benefits of freelancing for people internationally, is that they're able to access labor markets that are geographically very far from them. So it can definitely, it's definitely possible. Tax-wise, I believe you should just understand your local tax laws. It's going to be different for every country, so you want to just make sure you understand that. One general rule of thumb that we recommend is just to save about 25 to 30% of your income, whatever it is that you earn from a job. Put that in a savings account, save that, so that when it does come time to pay taxes, that you have enough to cover it. So you don't want to get surprised by a big tax bill at the end of the year. So just making sure that you're anticipating that by setting that money aside and not being tempted to spend it.
Awesome. Well, we are at time, and I just want to thank you and Samaschool and Kira and Aurelie so much for sharing all this information with everyone. I think it's been incredibly valuable, very relevant for Udacity students, Udacity alums, and everyone who's looking to build their skills and really gain more independence in their work. So thank you so much. For everyone who's on the call, this recording of this session will be available at the same link. So the same URL you have open now, it will still live on. So if you want to revisit a certain part, you can always just refresh the browser and then go back and listen to that part. I am also going to post into the chat again the resource that Samaschool has graciously offered to Udacity students and Udacity alum, where you can actually take their course on becoming a freelancer, and also get a very special discount on that full course. And so I've put that into chat. It's udacity.training.samaschool.org, but also keep an eye out in your email inbox for a special link to go there. So without further ado, thank you all so much. And I wish you all the success in the world in your next endeavor as a freelancer and in your career path to come. So thanks so much, everyone. All right, goodbye.